understand he's here regarding a time for the provost to speak with graduate students. The format today, we're going to have Jonathan Rose. Where is Jonathan? There he is. Who is the head of political science, and his work is in, he does consultation work, is going to be monitoring and facilitating the questions and moderation and answers. For those of you joining us online, Janice Johnson, our Director of Student Services, is going to be monitoring the chat, and we will move between the audience and online for the questions. Some of you may have had an opportunity to meet our new provost. He started on August 1st. He has been holding town halls across the university to meet with faculty and staff to learn about us, and he's here today to have some discussion and to answer your questions. So what I'd like to do is, without further ado, is to open up the questions. Would you like to make any of your opening remarks? Okay. All right. Thank you.
So I'm not here to give a big set piece presentation or anything. I'm here to about your concern. As Barbara said, this is one of the series of events. I think I've now been in all the faculties except the Faculty of Education. I think it's the only one that to hold very easy as a provost or any member of the leadership team to kind of be here to try and understand what your concerns are. I realize that we're living through a turbulent. There are various issues that make it difficult. The budget is an obvious one, and I'm sure that's but it's not the only one. Maybe time for those questions, but as I say, my intention is that this is repeated twice a year. So there'll be another one of these sometime in the winter semester, and then we'll gradually cover whatever issues people are concerned about. Want to cheat that one? Better? Better? Yes. Where was I up to? So there'll be a repeat of this sometime in the winter semester. The date's not yet been formed, but the intention is that this is for faculty and staff. Other events will be available for students, various different types. So I'm going to stop talking and hand it over to you. I will attempt to answer your questions. If I can't answer it, then we'll take it away and provide an answer later.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you very much. So the first thing I'm going to ask you is this going to move me up there? You're not so far. Is that right?
No, it's okay. No, it's okay. It's okay.
First value, moderator. So, so I've been asked to direct traffic here. So here's the principle I'm operating under. I want to maximize the number of questions asked to the provost. I want to make sure that there's an even distribution of questions from faculty and staff, and those in the room and those online. So what I'll ask you to do, as Dean Provost said, is to, when you begin, introduce yourself and your department or your school or your unit, and ask a question as quickly as possible. I'm going to ask your forgiveness in advance. That if I ask you to hurry up and ask a question, it's only because I want to maximize the time for questions. So with that, there are two people in the aisle. Julia has a microphone there, and Megan has a microphone here. So let's begin. Is there a question from the room, or should we begin online? Eleanor McDonald.
Archaeology. Just a basic question. Can you explain this? With regard to budget, what are the sources of income to the budget? So what's the money we come in, so the federal, traditional, et cetera. So yeah, that's just that basic, what's the income?
Okay, sure. The revenue that comes into the university is overwhelmingly dominated by the tuition fee income paid by students and the operating grant that is paid by government, basically. Right. So at least, so that's for the operating part of the university, which is the part that I'm responsible for. Right. There's a small additional amounts come in through various somewhat idiosyncratic sources, but the main one of those is from the investment funds. There's a small amount of money comes in through that. But something like 85% of the total revenue into the university is from tuition and operating grant, both of which depend on student numbers.
Thank you. No one right now.
Thank you. My question is about the timeline that you are. Okay, can you hear me now? Great. My question involves the 2-year timeline that has been established for this austerity plan. Given the Queen's strong financial position, for example, in the DBRS Morningstar assessment, this 2-year plan seems to create a lot of anxiety, concern, the sense that the university is not taking advantage of the fact that it actually has a very strong financial position and could spread these cuts out certainly over a longer period of time. And in fact, there's a question about whether or not they may be necessary. So my question has 2 parts. First of all, what alternatives have you considered to that? And are there, and what measures can you take with those alternatives to not target all those employees already precarious, adjunct faculty and staff who are quite concerned about this timeline?
The questions are not coming through online, so maybe you could just repeat the question as to the answer.
Okay.
Do you want Jonathan to repeat it?
No, I can.
Okay.
I can do that. So I think the question was that basically, why do we have to have the cost savings made in 2 years, and what alternatives have we considered to the kind of just simply saving costs? Then there was an expression of kind of concern about various people who will be impacted by this. So why 2 years? There's 2 answers to why 2 years, actually. Why 2 years? The first answer is because that's been decided by the board. So the Board of Trustees, which is our overall governing body, last May said that it would sign off the deficit budget for this year if next year, that is 24-25, we hit an operating deficit of no more than 5%, and for 25-26 came into structural balance as an institution. Okay, so that was set by the board. And the second answer to that question is because, frankly, if we don't do it in that time, we will run out of money. Yes, we will. You claim. You want me to answer the question or not? You want me to answer the question or not? Honesty, you're getting. That's your problem. The operating budget is a subset of the consolidated budget. You're quoting from the consolidated budget, which includes the reserved revenues. We cannot use endowments. We cannot use money that has been provided for research. We just cannot do that and use that for operating funds. They have to be used for the purposes for which they were given. Okay. In the end, that's why Laurentian went down, right? Laurentian went down because it started using money that it shouldn't be using. Our operating budget is in deficit. Okay. We posted an operating deficit of 30 million in 22-23. That was an actual deficit. A budget is simply a forecast. It's simply your best estimate, a model of the future. How are we going to do things this year? It's based on a lot of assumptions. The operating budget, how we run this university, was projected to be $62.5 thereabouts million in deficit by the end of this year. If we carry on spending at that rate, we will run out of reserves by 25-26. This faculty, in fact, will run out of reserves earlier than that. This faculty will run out of reserves next year. Okay, so the way the university runs its budget is to devolve budget decisions down to various units, faculties, or the units run by vice principals. This faculty's carry forward will disappear in 24-25. We will then have to cross-subsidize this faculty from other parts of the university. So I am concerned about the people that you've described, the adjuncts and other people on, as you put it, in precarious positions. I am concerned about those, but I'm also concerned about the survival of this institution. Because unless we sort this out, we will go under. Are you recording this on your phone? Are we happy about that? This is for faculty and staff. I am staff. Okay, but that's why they're not in.
So, is there a question online from staff?
So there are two questions online, and one, which came in second, is sort of a direct follow-up on that one. So with apologies to the first question asked, which I promise I will get to, I'm going to do this question that is a follow-up to that. So Mark Richardson, Physics McDonald Institute. The deficit has recently been amended from above 62 million to 48 million as reported in the Kingston Journal. Recently, a leaked memo spoke to an effort to account for $30 million of the deficit from FAS, I assume out of the 62 million. I'm curious if that 30 million is changed as part of the recent amendment. Is FAS still anticipating saving 30 million over 2 years?
So yes, the budget, the anticipated deficit at the end of this year has gone down from 62 to 48 million. That is to be expected. The budget, as I said, is a forecast. And as you move through the year, some of the things that you were forecasting to happen actually happen. So things realize, money gets spent, students arrive, all of these things happen. The budget goes from being a forecast to being something real, something actual. At the end of, so we re-estimate the budget at the end of every quarter. And at the end of quarter one, which has just passed, then the anticipated deficit for the entire institution is 48 million. As I described a moment ago, the way this works within the university is that the budget decisions are pushed down to faculties and to other units. So the totality of the institutional budget is the sum of all of those things. And the sum of all of those things are a combination of positive differences and negative differences. Okay, the overall is a reduction. But I'm afraid in this faculty, it's actually worse. The Q1 estimation for the deficit in this faculty has gone up from 27 million to 37 million. That's largely as a result of lower international student enrollment than targeted. It's a result of fewer faculty retirements than anticipated. And and other cost increases due to inflation and various other things. So it hasn't helped this faculty, but it has helped the institution.
Thank you. Megan.
My name is Dorit Rahman. I'm from the Department of Film and Media. And my question is, you've just indicated that the Faculty of Arts and Science will actually run out of its reserves sooner than other applied faculties, which are deregulated. And my question is, by the end of this austerity measures in 2 years, how do you envision the university looking? What is the university and what is the place of arts and science in this university, given that, as you indicated, arts and science is less financially viable? So are there other values that need to dictate where cuts are being held rather than just numbers? And if so, what are those values as the one leading the academic operation of this university? So what are your values? Thank you.
Do I need to repeat that question?
Sure, I can. I think the question was...
Did they hear online?
Yeah, there's a bit of a buzz online, feedback.
Metaphorical. So I think the question was around values that are non-economic and what are the values of the faculty and what are, I think, Provost values, correct?
Yeah, so as Barbara said in her introduction, I've been here about 4 months, right? And I've inherited a particular way of doing budgeting and financial things within the university. And that has operated for some time. And kind of the university's kind of got used to the way that that works. And everyone was happy about it when surpluses were being made. Various faculties, including this one, were making surpluses and carrying money forward and you know, having savings accounts, basically, that they had to take forward. Now, when we're in a situation where we have deficit, some faculties are complaining about the fact that they have a deficit. Well, you didn't complain about it when you were making surpluses and hanging on to those surpluses, so you now have to deal with it when you have a deficit. Deficits and surpluses are the same sort of phenomenon, right, at least from a budgeting point of view. So that's the way the university has chosen to work, and it's been using that budget model for many years. Okay, and it was convenient because faculties and other units could grow and they could solve their problems internally by investing in their own people. But what happens when things get tougher is that you have to downsize. And you can grow the establishment, but then you need to shrink the establishment when things get more difficult. And that's where we are now. Do I think that there are things that we're going to that should influence this other than budget one? Yes, of course. And we're going to have to talk about cross-subsidies into at least parts of this faculty. Because otherwise, what happens? I've said to you, right, your reserves will be gone next year. If we just left you, if you were a standalone organization, we just left you, what happens then? You're basically bankrupt. We're going to have to cross-subsidize you. Right? And that will have to be done in a values-led way. We're going to have a conversation across the whole university with the other deans, with the other people who hold budgets, and say, do we value this sufficiently to spend our money on it? I'm not going to make the mistake of naming disciplines that might be in that position, but you can imagine what they might be, right? We have units with, relatively large numbers of faculty and other staff, relatively few numbers of students. They're going to need a cross-subsidy. The university is going to have to look at that and say, is that something we value? Is that something that means so much to us that we're prepared to put our own money into it rather than them washing their own face? That's what they're going to have to do. That's what we're going to have that conversation probably in the early part of next year, because the first subventions are going to be needed for 24-25.
Can I ask clarification on cross-subsidy? I mean, you've abused my position as moderator here. When you're referring to cross-subsidy, do you mean inter-faculty or intra-faculty?
Just so that we're clear, between faculties, right? The faculty already has the capability to cross-subsidize within itself, right? So you can take, depending on how you organize things within your own faculty, you can choose to do that. Okay? But as a whole faculty, you're going to run out of reserves. You're going to be unable to do that, right?
Okay. Over here.
Thank you. Darren, the new classes in archaeology. I'm deeply concerned about the emphasis on class sizes.
Sorry, I can only just hear you from here, so that.
I'm deeply, sorry.
That's really picking that up.
I'm deeply concerned about the emphasis on class sizes. One of the first things that most of us heard from Provost was that you were canceling all classes, undergraduate classes. Queen's already has the second worst faculty student ratio in our category of universities. And it seems odd that the fingers be pointed at class sizes. Well, I come from a discipline that isn't particularly huge, but we've been very effective with that. We work really hard to keep it that way. And I'm deeply concerned with the future of my department. I've just shut down the department. So we're worried about that. And I point out just one point that was made earlier that Queen's isn't a teaching university, we're a teaching research university. Research isn't meant to be driven by local students. It's supposed to exist not just at the university, but in an international research ecosystem, let's say. And when we're one of the last preserves, national, that has specialists that are doing certain kinds of work, I don't think it's thinking of Queens in the terms, we're just closing things down because they're not popular, not attracting students.
Sure. So first of all, decision about class sizes is not mine. That was the faculty decision.
It came from the provost. It came from the provost, said that there would be a recommendation not to have classes
It
under.
has to be authorized by me.
Yeah.
But the recommendation came from the faculty. So, as I explained in the very first answer, the overwhelming bulk of our revenue into the university comes from teaching, comes from student numbers. There surely can't be a debate that small classes are more expensive to teach than big classes. Don't see how there could be any logical conclusion that would take that otherwise.
The way it's always worked by departments, we have some very small classes, in fact, language courses, which are one of the processes.
Someone I can't hear this. Can you get a mic to the speaker, please?
Good question. So the discipline I'm in has always had an issue where its language courses are very small. This is not just Queens, this is true international. But we preserve those languages because they have a core function. And they're in what our students. And we pay for those effectively by teaching some very good graduates. We have any number of courses that we teach undergraduates, we have 200 more students. Our largest course average is 576 students over the last decade. Obviously, we need to look at the whole picture. We're teaching some large courses and some small courses. If we just cut the small courses, there's the scientific provide about teaching courses. And what kinds of faculty are going to be attracted to this university? That's the kind of teaching class.
Sure, but this is where we come to the point about subventions. Right, we have to use the example you've provided. We have to say, do we as a university value classics? Do we? Are we then? Oh, good. Are we then prepared to put our money into it?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but the other faculties will have to. That's where the money is. I don't have direct control over very much money at all. Right. It comes into the faculties. The other deans will have to say, a case will have to be made to the Dean of Medicine, the Dean of Engineering, the Dean of Business, that they're going to put some of their money in to support classics.
Question over there. And again, you can just identify your name and your unit, please.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Cameron. I am a graduate student employee. I work as a TA in 2 different departments. One is sociology, one is a school of sociology and health studies. I work 2 TA shifts so that I can afford to live because the minimum funding packages for graduate students are not enough to live on after we do tuition. I'll try to do this. I apologize for taking this opportunity. Actually,
I'm happy to have you ask the question, but this is an opportunity for staff and faculty serving. So that's not a comment on. Proceed. So you get your appreciate it. Thanks.
Sure, but I will clarify, I am a graduate student as well as a graduate student employee. Maybe you need to check out what PSAC 901 is. We are the union of graduate student employees. So I'm here in that capacity today. Sociology, as I mentioned, which is one of the first things that people mention as being worthless because we address relations of power and we question them. My question is, earlier you had said, this 2-year, all this is falling out of the decision that the Board of Trustees made last year. So we would have, if you had just left us without you, we would have had a different Board of Trustees, I'm sure, with different priorities. My question is, if that memo had leaked, what was the plan? When were we going to find out? And how? Thank you.
Thank you for the question.
So your question seems to be predicated on the assumption that somehow I can manipulate the Board of Trustees.
No, my question is, what was the plan without the memo leak?
The memo leak was simply an internal document from this faculty that ended up being put out into the public domain. It was part of the process of moving through this phase of the university's life. The first communication about the budget deficit came out, I think, in May 2023, before I even started my job here. The people who were paying attention, the audited accounts from 22-23 showed a deficit. Okay, there was an article in the Gazette in May announcing the hiring freeze. Right. There was communications in August after I started talking about the deficit. There have been discussions at Senate about the deficit. So the memo made no difference to the communications. It's part of an ongoing process. We are up to a certain point. Right? I think everyone wants instant clarity about all the impacts that might possibly happen everywhere. And for an organization of this size, that's simply impossible. So again, because of the way we run the budgets, different units have to take their own decisions about what they can do. What's happening in this faculty is somewhat different from what's happening in engineering, for example. The different vice provosts are all planning what they're having to do. You think things are difficult here, in shared services, they have to get to operational balance next year. 62 to 48 million is because the shared services have actually managed to get into a surplus position, and that is helping the university out, because overall the faculty is a slightly worse position. So we can protest as much as we like that we don't want to be in this situation, and who does? Okay. No one wants to be in this position, but we are.
So let's go to a question online from a staff member. Janice?
So Rita Kugreya from Global Development Studies, apologies if I mispronounced your name, Rita. Can you please elaborate on what values and principles will inform strategic decision-making around the cuts to service?
Any cuts to service are at the moment all being taken faculty by faculty. So I actually cannot answer that question. That's not within my hands to answer. Okay, as I've said 2 or 3 times, the way the budget works is the budget goes down into faculties or other units. Right? I'll just use faculties as a shorthand for financial units, right? The impact of those deficits is different in different faculties, and that is what is happening. Those are local, much more local decisions than the question implies.
Thank you. Jordan.
Thank you. Jordan Morelli from physics. I'm a faculty member. I have a few comments and I'll get to a question, but I just want to start by saying this budget model that we have is not one that's well loved, but a provost brought it in and a provost can take it away, I think. I would also add that to the previous question, things like QSAS, the accommodation services, are, I believe, a shared service centrally administered. I think that's the kind of thing that the question was getting at. But I would also, you made the point that faculties need to live within their budgets, but none of the administration, including your office, sir, brings in revenue. You all come from the money we bring in. And so where are your cuts is one question. But the other thing, and I think I speak for most people, but I'm not sure, we'll let the audience weigh in, but I think there's a real lack of trust here. I agree with you that the numbers have been public for a long time, since at least May, that there's been something coming up, but we don't fully believe the numbers. We know that over the last 9 years, the university has run an accumulated surplus of over $600 million that we seem to not be able to touch. The timing of all of this, the university has very shamefully refused to reopen contracts with staff at the university after the Bill 124 was ruled unconstitutional, and has instead opted to wait for the courts to impose penalties. Very shameful. I'm working on it. But most of the staff unions are bargaining in 2024, and so the timing of all of this need for austerity seems very skeptical to me. So, I just want to give 2 quick examples and then I'll ask a question. The first is, I was in the washroom in my building recently. We're still in a pandemic or coming out of the pandemic. There's no paper towels. The place is a filthy mess. Okay. The cleaning services on campus are garbage. Not because the workers are garbage, because there's not enough of them and they're not paid well enough. Okay. I was on my way to the Board of Trustees meeting on Friday, and I got myself a lunch at one of the food service outlets on campus. And there was a sign on the counter basically saying, if you have an allergy, don't eat here, because we can't guarantee we won't kill you because there's no chef. There's not enough people, enough chefs to actually ensure that food is safe on Queen's campus. This is shameful. What are we doing to our students? This is the environment we're putting them in. It doesn't make any sense. So my question is this. We're proposing cuts at the unit level. We've already been through cuts. The last time we did it, we said we would preserve upper year courses and balloon the lower year courses. We can't cut anymore. Our staff are at their breaking point. Faculty are at their breaking point. So what are you willing to throw away? What are you willing to do away with in the what makes Queens Queens to pay for these cuts? Because something has to go. We can't continue to work ourselves to the bone. None of our workers can here.
Thank you. I think your question is predicated on the idea that somewhere, somehow, there's other money, right? That we can simply, if we had the will to use it, we would use it. And that's just not the case. Right? Everyone knows, everyone in this room knows that tuition was cut in 2019 and has been frozen ever since. Jordan, you asked your question. Right? Everyone knows that, right? And so even if you completely distrust everyone in Richardson Hall, which maybe you do, not everyone. Okay, I'll ask you afterwards who the people are. Even if you do that, it's not hard really to see the situation. We have revenue that the university has flatlined, right? And that's not our decision. That's an external decision, right? That's the provincial government's decision to do that. It's the same for every Ontario university. We also have to admit that our international student recruitment has not been good. Peaked in 2019 and has not picked up since. If you like, that's an internal failure, right? I would acknowledge that. The net result is that the revenue has just been flat, but costs have not, right? So this is nothing about whether this, I'm trying to get away from whether you trust Richardson Hall or not, right? Everyone knows those two things have happened. And eventually, everyone knows from their own households, eventually those lines will cross. It might not be, it might not have been yesterday, it might not be today, it might not be tomorrow. Eventually it will. Just logically, that's going to happen. And that's where we are. We're trying not to sacrifice, right? We're an academic institution. Okay, our primary activities are teaching and research. That is what we have to preserve. We must preserve that, right? So we have to make sure that everything else that we do is done as efficiently as possible. Okay, because it won't, that is the only way we're going to get sustainably out of the position that we're currently in.
So, Jordan began his question by talking about leading by example. Could you talk about the efforts that your office and Richardson Hall has made to demonstrate the cuts as well?
Yeah. But the same cuts have come into all the vice provost, the vice principal portfolios, with the difference that we all have to have structural balance for 24-25. So we're part of the shared services. We all have to have balance for next academic year. Faculties have longer. My office has. The provost office has made those cuts and is in structural balance.
There are questions either in the room or
Hi, thanks for taking my question. I'm Tony Thornton. I'm from the Faculty of Arts and Science. I'm at Arts and Science Online. I'm an educator. I'm an expert in pedagogy, and so I'm not an expert in economics, though I'm currently designing economics with somebody who is an expert. So my question is, the previous Associate Dean of Teaching and Learning told me going into the pandemic that we were the only faculty that had a surplus and that we were actually carrying other faculties. So one of the questions I have is about the history of that happening, if that has happened in the past, and why that can't happen, you know, even temporarily now. Another question I have is, my understanding is that, and again, not an economics expert, but my understanding is that there was actually revenue of $200 million in the last, between 2017 and 2021. And so I guess, like, I'm just a bit confused because, like, you know, in my own budget, you know, if I make a lot of money, I save for a rainy day. I'm just not sure why it is we're in this position where we're suddenly finding ourselves with a deficit if somebody was looking at the books all along. The other thing I want to say is I really don't understand why the students aren't in this room. As somebody who is like an educator, I understand you want to prioritize staff and faculty's voices in this meeting. And, you know, thank you for taking our questions, but they could at least be here listening. I think there needs to be more transparency. I think people are really scared. And I think that, you know, the silence around many of these things is not helping.
I'm just trying to, yeah, do you want to reiterate the question?
If I can paraphrase, what are your plans for hearing from students? And why are they not in the room? That's the question. And the first question at the beginning was a kind of an articulation that has been heard before about why is it that we're in the situation we're in when our books look so good?
Yeah, I think there was a comment that at some point in the past, this was the only faculty making a surplus. I actually don't think that's true. I can't see where you are now. You're in the, no, there you are. I don't think that has been true. Different faculties have made surpluses at different points. The one that, you know, if you like, was the kind of worst offender was the Faculty of Health Sciences that made a deficit for some time, but now is in balance. This faculty has made surpluses in the past. That's what has paid for the deficit in the last few years, and what will be paying for it this year. So the faculty has saved for a rainy day. It has had that money, but it's been raining and has been raining for rather longer than anticipated. Right. So we're getting to the point where that rainy day fund is running out. So yes, we have, but I think we have done what you suggested, but it's not been enough. And so we need to do something about it. You made a comment about students. So again, we've reiterated the point about students. This is a faculty and staff event. This is why I'm here, and this was set up a long time ago. One of the first things I asked to be able to do when I came was to have these type of meetings with faculty and staff. Right? And it will continue, and we will continue having these conversations for as long as you're interested in it anyway, ideally once a semester. Okay. There are other opportunities to talk to students. Barbara mentioned a meeting that will be held in January. You know, I have regular meetings with various student representatives as part of my job. So there are other opportunities to talk to students. Not so many opportunities to talk to faculty and staff.
Thank you. Elaine, is there a question online?
Technology is collapsing around us.
Hi. So I have a question from staff, Krista Wolf in the Faculty of Arts and Science. I'm wondering if senior administration has considered taking pay cuts or reducing positions in order to help save the things like courses, programs, and support staff that actually matter to students.
Do you really think that would help? Okay. Even if you didn't have a provost, how many? Yeah, okay. But if you didn't have a provost at all, how many positions would that save? How many do you think it would save? 3. Yeah. We've got 48 million is the current estimate of the deficit. 48 million. Really? So I don't think it helps. This conversation does not help.
Okay, so we'll go to the floor, Elaine.
Can I just say that it's a shame that there's this antagonism here. No, it is. And it's easy for you to hate me. And it's not funny. It is very not funny. Do you think it's straightforward to be here, to be in Barbara's shoes or mine? Do you think that's easy? It is not amusing. It's not a laughing matter. This is very, very serious. Queens could cease to exist if we don't deal with this issue. It could. We are trying to save arts and sciences. Barbara's job is to make sure that arts and sciences has a sustainable future. That is not an easy thing to do. So please give her and leadership respect.
Hello, my name's Elaine Power. I'm a professor in the School of Kinesiology and Health Studies. I'd just like to pick up, I appreciate the opportunity to ask a question. I have many, but I would like to pick up some questions that were asked and haven't been answered. I'd also just like to point out that you're sitting under a Queen's University sign. And so the idea that we are a university, we are a university together. We have an academic mission. And one of the questions that I think hasn't been answered is what values have guided this? And if you can't answer that question, we look to you as the provost to set and VP academic to set the leadership of the institution. And our goal, our mission is academic. So we hope you have some values that are guiding these decisions. And if you can't answer them, then perhaps Dean Crow could as well for the faculty. The university is a major employer in the town, in the city of Kingston. If we're laying off hundreds of staff, that has a huge ripple effect throughout the community. I wonder if that's been taken into account. And I wonder, the very first question was, what other alternatives have been taken into account rather than these cuts? You've made the statement, which I completely believe, that there are a lot of assumptions built into these cuts. There was a blue ribbon panel on post-secondary education that just delivered its report recently that recommended that tuition freeze be lifted and increase in the provincial grant to universities be forthcoming. If that happens, what about all these staff that have already been laid off, and suddenly we're able to have more money coming in? So my most important question, I think, is what are the values that are guiding these cuts?
As I said in response to another question, the university has a particular way of doing these things and has had that way for some time. Okay. We cannot just instantly change it. Okay. The university's got used and has kind of equilibrated to the application of a particular way of moving funds around itself. We can change it over time, and Jordan, wherever he is, made the point that a provost brought the model in and provost can take out. That's true. We can change it, but it takes time to change it. I obviously wasn't here when it was brought in. I think Alan Harrison brought it in. We have to, if we change it, we have to change it in a considered way and to think about it. Would I, if I had free choice, be doing it in the way that we're currently doing it? No. I think one of the first conversations I had with the deans when all together was to say, you know, Queens has essentially made one big deficit into, you know, half a dozen moderately sized deficits, and has meant that the impact of this falls kind of in a disproportionate way across the university. You know, would we be better off kind of having, if we had pulled back all the reserves from and not allowed carry forwards and held that all centrally so we could kind of move money around more easily within the institution, would that make our life easier now? Probably it would. But that's not where we are. Right? I think we probably need to move in that direction, but we just can't do it instantly. You know, this is, as you pointed out, this is a, you know, roughly $1 billion, you know, institution with, you know, thousands of employees and tens of thousands of students. No, you can't change things quickly. I wish that you could. I wish there was a magic wand that said, here, it's finished, right? I wish that was the case, but it's not.
Elaine's question asked about the blue ribbon panel. Can I follow up on that and ask if you're optimistic about Alan Harrison's conclusion for the blue ribbon panel? Is that a bit of a lifeline for the university?
Yeah, it's interesting. The same person's name comes up twice in one lot. The Blue Ribbon Panel has provided recommendations to government. Okay, it's not a decision. It's not that we don't know it's going to happen. The governmental response to the Blue Ribbon Panel, which was kind of, you know, the immediate response the next day or so was basically I mean, I'll paraphrase it, but it was basically, thank you very much for your hard work. We might think about it when we believe the universities are working efficiently. It was something like that, right? And no one is very optimistic about it. Our feedback from our government relations people is that, you know, government's response may be nothing. It may be minimal. We'll have to wait a few more months to see what that response actually is. Is there any scenario which puts these things back to what it was even in 2018? So before tuition got cut, it's unimaginable to see that happen. You know, this is a government, I think it's 2 years away. You probably know political science. 2 years away from the next election. Realistically, you know, governments that are coming towards election time don't do things that are going to piss off their electorate. That's a non-technical word. But they're going to be, you know, maybe not quite now. Maybe there's a little window for them to do something now, but probably if they haven't done it by the summer, they're not going to do it. That'd be my guess.
Is there a question on the line?
Okay, so this next question is from Vanessa E. Thompson in Gender Studies. How will these budget cuts align with the university and FAS's stated commitments to EDI, AA, and Indigenous, especially when we know that when workload increases, accessibility and other sorts of equity and justice commitments often get sacrificed first?
Yes, so it's a risk that we have to be aware of, isn't it? You know, why is that funny? Why? No, I'm not. I'm here. I'm here. We're awake, did you say? Why is it awake? No single person has lost their job at the moment. No, they haven't. No one yet has lost their job. So how is it awake? No, it's just simply not. I don't understand your point. EDII is the impact on EDII is the way in which things are done rather than what you do. Right. So if trying to go back to the question, we have to be very conscious of the impacts of any change that is going to be made on all of these issues, on equity and diversity, on indigenization. We have to be holding that up as something that we hold ourselves to. So every decision, and Barbara's been much too good-natured to actually say this, but I'll say it on her behalf. So I have annoyed the deans by putting in place a small group that meets every week that interrogates every proposed action from every faculty, that will be holding this, and we'll be checking as far as we can that all of the things that are done do not fall disproportionately onto disadvantaged groups, among other things. So that is what we're doing.
Great. Thanks very much. I'm Bronwyn Bjorkman. I'm the head of the Department of Languages, Literatures, and Cultures in Faculty of Arts and Science. My question is about the hiring freeze and about the level at which decisions are being made. So you've spoken several times in this town hall about the way you're framing it has sort of come across as many decisions are out of your hands. They're being made at the faculty level because the budgets are developed to the faculties. But the hiring freeze memo, when it was announced, said that exceptions could be made for critical positions to be approved by the deans. But speaking as somebody in a department, you've also sort of talked about decisions that we'll have to make next year. We're making these decisions now. So my department has a retiring staff member. We have a very small staff complement. And in the process of requesting a replacement, the response we got from Faculty of Arts and Science was essentially that they didn't think that the replacement would be approved by the Provost's office. And so I think that question of what is critical for you? What decisions is your office making? I would just like to hear about what critical positions are. And I'll point out, one staff person making less than $100,000 isn't going to solve the deficit any more than eliminating an associate dean or eliminating an associate vice provost. These are all, the message we're getting is that every small cut is needed. Reducing our office supplies order at the department level is needed so that we can contribute towards financial security for the university. So some of these decisions, or at least being communicated to us, are being made by your office. And so I'd just like to hear maybe even specifically about the hiring freeze. What is a critical position that you would approve replacing?
So far, since the hiring freeze, almost 350 positions have actually been hired. And the decision that was made after the hiring freeze was announced is that the decisions over who to hire would be largely in the hands of the faculties. Right? So the faculties are taking their own decisions about who to hire and who not to hire. There so far has not come a single request to me to ask for permission to hire.
So maybe this is a question for Dean Crow about why the message that I've received from Faculty of Arts and Science HR is that requests were not being approved because they didn't think they'd be approved by the provost.
With all due respect, you're answering your own question.
Mm-hmm.
You're saying somebody thinks that they won't be approved. There's a perception it won't be approved.
There's a perception it won't be approved. That suggested to me a process where things have to be submitted to your office for approval. Are you telling me, so I am incorrect in that impression, is what I'm hearing from you right now? Okay, no, okay, thank you. My name is Mary Louise Adams. I'm in the School of Kinesiology and Health Studies. And I have to say, I've been here for more than 25 years. The morale in this institution is lowest that I've ever seen it, as I'm sure everybody in this room feels, and you're feeling right now. As you said earlier, budgets are simply projections. They're based on decision making. They are not about actual dollars and cents. They are representations of dollars and cents, but they do have, as people are aware in this room, very concrete effects. Queens overestimated its deficit by an average of $44 million for the past 6 years. We also know that 2 bond rating agencies have said Queens is in great financial shape. One, just a few months ago, said Queens should be able to weather the current provincial situation without making drastic cuts. People understand the provincial situation, but you can see why there's a lot of distrust in this room that the cuts we face need to be so drastic. So why should we assume that this particular budget deficit is also not an overestimation?
Yep. That's fair. We are bad at budgeting. We're particularly bad because the budgets, as you rightly said, are a forecast, they're a model, and they're based on information that comes up about, for example, student numbers. Okay, so a faculty every year, about now actually, comes up and says, we think that next year we'll be able to recruit, whatever, 150 new international students, or, all of these numbers, right? All come in from the faculty. They get put into the model, and we say, well, okay, for next year, and you need the budget because you need that permission to spend, right? The budget's not unnecessary. It's important. And we say, well, okay, we're going to believe the faculties. We're going to believe that they come forward and that these numbers will actually be hit, right? But overall, across the whole university, we're about 100 international students down this year, down from our target. Those targets are not invented by my office. They're just the sum of things that have come up from the faculty, right? So when we fall short, so the budget goes forward saying, we're going to get all of these international students, we're 100 students down. That's like 5 million just in one go.
With all due respect, this is one more example of passing this to the faculties.
Yeah.
And, we also know that there's pooled investment funds that the university has used interest income from those in the past, that there are decisions that are made above the faculty level. I'm happy to argue with the faculty about all sorts of things, but the number of times you have not answered questions that are the responsibility of the board and trustees and higher up is getting frustrating here. So we know that the university can make decisions around the percentage of endowment income, very small percentage, but that's still a lot of money. Pooled investment funds have moved from different sides of the ledger back and forth when people have needed, but also $44 million, an overestimate of a deficit. If that's what we're used to, that's not international students.
Well, a lot of it is actually, because we're still about 200 international students down on where we were in 2019. The pooled investment fund is a central decision, and about $5 million of the interest that fund earns comes into the operating budget. And that is a decision. Okay, that's a decision as to how much money that is. The rest of the interest goes into the capital fund. So it doesn't disappear. It doesn't vanish. It goes into the money that is used to put up buildings and things. I do have to say, though, that this weekend at the board meeting, we were told that the pooled investment fund actually has lost money this year. So if it loses money this year, that 5.2 million won't be there. Right. So yes, the decision about how much money to take from that into the operating is a decision, and that decision can be changed. And we'll look at it. But at the moment, you have to, that sum of money has to be actually exist, because the operating budget has to be there because it's the operating budget that we rely on to pay people and pay invoices, pay companies that provide services, and all of these things. That's where that money all comes from. So if we're going to commit to paying anything, we need to know that the money is actually going to be there.
So for the students in the audience, and maybe some of us here, can you briefly talk about the relationship of the provost to the board?
Basically, I, as a provost, take directions from the principal. The principal reports to the board. The board is the overarching governing body of the institution, and principally has an oversight role. So the principal and I take proposals to the board, which they either agree to or reject. They set the overall strategic direction of the board, of the university. So the strategic goals of the university are endorsed by the board, create. They take a proposal from us and decide whether they like it or not. The same is true of the budget. So the board doesn't create the budget, but the board presents the budget to the board, and the board says that's either acceptable or not acceptable. Other things, so large capital projects are also approved by the board. I think this is paid for over about 5 minutes. I think the board will have to sign off on.
From Suman Majumdar in economics. On the revenue side, are there any initiatives afoot to provide units with incentives for revenue generation? The current budget model provides very little of such incentives.
Well, I'm not sure what incentivizes revenue generation. The faculties are assigned all the revenue that they generate, which is then basically taxed to pay for shared services. And it's taxed on a model that is based on an estimate of how much shared services used. I'm happy to talk about the details of that in the context of this question, if that's how that works. So faculty increases its revenue, then it's doing well. There can, and there should be conversations about increasing revenue, but increasing revenue is a way of referring to students, which is not particularly constructive way of thinking about anything. So increasing revenue basically means increasing the number of students in some form. It might be any sort of student, whether that's a student who's physically here, a student who's online, a student that is doing different sorts of courses. We can increase our number of students, but we also have to recognise that in the city of Kingston, our ability to do that is fairly limited. Kingston is not a big place. It doesn't have an enormous capacity to absorb additional students, particularly in accommodation. So I have a meeting every week with representatives of the city, police, fire brigade, emergency services, the city hall. Basically, that's an hour spent listening to them tell me about the most recent grievances they have over student behaviour. And that's trying to defend it. That's where we are. And they already feel that they're at some degree of kind of overcapacity with regard to the number of students in the town. The town is 150,000 people roughly. We have roughly 30,000 students. So we're bringing in and out 20% of the population every year. That's a lot for a city of this size to accommodate.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm Hannah. I'm an instructor in geography and planning. My question is pertaining to this issue of international student recruitment that keeps being brought up, which you admit yourself it was an internal failing. I just want to understand the long-term plans for that, given that these measures that you're taking will undoubtedly affect international student recruitment. If I was an international student coming to Queen's now, or really any kind of student, and I saw that these were the things that were being planned to put into place, trust me, I would not plan to come to Queen's. So you talk about this as a 2-year plan, but what's the long-term understanding of what happens when there are less and less international happening?
As I said earlier, any university basically does two things. It does teaching and research. Both of those things are done by faculty. Those are strange ones. And we have to make sure that that work done by faculty is at the prime position of our in our minds when we take decisions about the future of the university. That doesn't mean that the support services offered in the university are unimportant. Far from it, they are. They are important, but they need to be done as efficiently as possible, so that we preserve the academic mission of the university. So, the long-term plan is to get through this crisis and then embark on a process whereby we make the support services delivery as efficient and effective as possible. That will mean centralizing professional services. That will mean using technology much more than we currently do. That will mean standardizing processes across the whole university. International student recruitment is part of the revenue to the university and to the faculty. So it's a revenue stream, if you like. It happens to be significant because we charge international students a large amount of money. Whether we should charge them as large an amount of money is an open question. And I think part of our issue is that we've priced ourselves out of the market, frankly. We have to address where we are with international students. We have to recognize that when we're dealing with international students, they could decide to go anywhere in the world. They're not, a domestic student has a lot of kind of historical baggage about where to go to a university that an international student typically doesn't have. So if you're a domestic student, you might come to Queen's, came to Queen's, or as your kind of other people that whose judgment you value came to Queen's, that you know Queen's, it kind of exists in the universe of things that for an international student that's not really the case. They could go here, they could go to somewhere in the United States, United Kingdom, anywhere. Right? So first of all, we have to get over that. And then we have to recognize that, even if you decide you want to come to Canada, the time you touch down at the airport, there are 10 universities quite means within equal travel distance of Toronto Airport as Kingston. So we have to make the argument as to why you come here. What is the added value of your degree at Queen's over and above somewhere Waterloo or McMaster? Yeah, but that's for you to answer. That's not. Yeah, but that's for you to answer, not me. You have to have, your degree has to have that ability to recruit those students. Yeah, sure. I actually disagree, right? We are the university. You are the university as much as I am the university. I'm sorry, I didn't hear that particular heckle. Hmm? Yes, because this is for faculty and staff. Right. Yeah, and this event is designed to be a regular occasion where the faculty and staff get to talk to me. Plenty of other events. We've already talked about the events that will be organized to talk to students. There will be, what did you call it? A student assembly run by ASUS. And that will be in January. That's already been said.
So we'll go online to
I have to scroll back up through all of the list of questions here as I'm copying them all down. Shannon Day, Classics and Archaeology. There have been many rumors about departments being shut down and everything being streamlined through FAS. Will there be staff layoffs in the near future?
There are no plans I'm aware of for departments to be closed down. In fact, in this university, it's very difficult to close down departments. The collective agreement has a whole chapter devoted to this subject. So that's hard, and so that's not, and that is not, as far as I know, being planned. That does not mean that departments are unaffected. It would be perfectly reasonable for arts and science to move support functions out of departments into the faculty centrally. That would be a perfectly reasonable thing to do. I'd be surprised if that doesn't happen. Are there layoffs? What was that? How was that phrase? Are there layoffs being planned? Staff layoffs being planned? Was that the question? Are there staff layoffs being planned? Currently, right now, there are no staff layoffs in the works. But can we really imagine getting through this without some? No, it's not up to me. The simple financials of it, you know this yourself. You all run your own personal finances, and the university's finances are no different. You all know that if you, month after month, spend more money than you earn, you will eventually be in trouble. You still have to pay the repayments on the mortgage, right? If you default on your mortgage company will have something to say about it fairly quickly. Yeah, sure. But it's still part of your monthly outgoings, right? You still have to pay the mortgage repayment. Otherwise, whoever's lending you that money will be knocking on the door fairly quickly. Sure. I'm not. The minute you spend $1 of that endowment will be the last time you get an endowment. Because it's supporting all the endowed positions within the university. Anyone here who has an endowed chair or an endowed position of some sort is drawing on that endowment. So it can't be spent. We are not allowed to spend our endowment. It is restricted. That is widely accepted among all universities in the world. Yes, it's a rule. It's a rule in the sense that you spend it, you will not have it again. Donors give you that money. They give you the money and say, I'm going to give you, I don't know, $5 million, and I want you to spend it on, I don't know, people from Classics have spoken in the meeting. I want to support ancient Greek. Right? If you start taking that $5 million and spending it on physics, the donor will be unhappy.
So let's not have a conversation between two or three people here. So I'm going to go to the next question. And I want to make sure that an opportunity from staff, like undergraduate, chair, graduate chair, those kind of frontline folks have an opportunity to speak here.
Our TAs are staff, so we need to hear them first in the line.
I'm happy to entertain questions from TAs, assuming that at the assembly in January, faculty members can ask questions. Before we go to this question, is there a faculty member who might ask a question?
Happy to wait after.
Yeah. Go ahead, waiter.
Thank you very much. I am a TA. I would like to first say I appreciate the support because I do feel that TAs are just as much of the university, just as much of the teaching staff as professors, as adjuncts, as everyone. So when you say that we are the university and this is a meeting for staff, but TAs are excluded from that, I think that sets a really harsh message. So thank you to the profs and the staff who have allowed us to speak as well and respect our jobs as well, because we are paid by the university. I have two questions. First, it's already been brought up a lot about students not being included in these conversations, so I'm not going to bring that up again. It's been asked and answered. My question is, we've talked about international students. You've said that, you know, we need to prioritize domestic students. What about incoming students who feel that they may have made an uninformed decision choosing an arts and science program based on the appeal of small programs, based on the appeal of small class sizes, based on the appeal of individualized research that's going to be cut? I often work at fall preview, open house, and that's one of our pull factors is we tell students, come do this degree because we have small classes and you get more hands-on time. Come do this degree because it's individualized. But if those are what cuts are being made, what are our pull factors then? Why do an arts and science program? My second question is, if this deficit is largely in part from the tuition freeze, that was what's said in your email, it was said in a lot of memos, if it's largely in part because of the tuition freeze, why is UOttawa not in a deficit? Why is Guelph, Western, Lakehead, Carleton, all these universities, why are they not in a deficit cutting their international studies, cutting their classics programs, cutting their English programs? Why are they not facing the same thing if this is an Ontario-wide problem?
I just want to, I'll answer the actual question, but you said at the beginning that I said that we should ignore international students in favor of domestic students, and I don't feel that I said that. So, no. I'm saying that international students should come here because of the value of the degree that they get from coming here. So we should be able to make them an offering that says, you come here and you'll get the best degree that you can, better than anywhere else, right? And that's the message that needs to get across. And it's the message that frankly isn't getting across.
My question.
But the answer to your question, oh God, what was the final? You had a question right at the end.
Pull factor when you're reducing international.
No. About small classes. It was about small classes. Yeah.
I said that when we're promoting politics, devs, English, all these programs, and I'm standing at fall preview telling first-year students, potential first-year students, come to Queen's because we have small classes. Come to Queen's because your TAs will care about you. You're not just a number. Come to Queen's because of all these individualized learning opportunities. If those are all going to be cut, then why come to Queen's?
The answer should be because you're getting the best, English program or whatever, which was one of the examples you used, then you're going to get anywhere. That's that, that you've got the best professors, the best people to teach you. That should be the reason you come here.
So the second question was around the outlier of Queens. Is Queens?
Oh yes, that's right. They are. They are. They are. They just haven't all announced it yet. Just wait and see. All the Ontario universities will come out with similar deficits over the next year. Not necessarily, because it's the other things that they do. Each university has a different mix of different activities, doesn't it? No, because the measures that you use to save money do not affect the deficit. The deficit is not created in order to make savings, right? The deficit is there, and in order to address it, you have to make savings. It's a different. You've got the cart before the horse. No, you didn't. Last year, you didn't.
Yeah, I just want to say that for the folks that are online, anyone who makes comments from the audience, they can't hear, so please grab a mic if there's a comment to be made. The next question is from Andrea Reed, School of Kinesiology and Health Studies, for a clarification on an earlier question. Is the university moving towards a model where only profit-making faculties will continue? Are you proposing that the value of some faculties will be determined by those faculties making the most money? How do you reconcile this position with the educational purpose of the institution?
The only way that at the moment we can cope with faculties that lose money is by doing what I've described as a subvention. So you can go across the university and say, are you prepared over there to subsidize this activity over there? At the moment, we haven't done that. Right up until now, we haven't done that, or done it only in a very small way. We're going to need to do it. This faculty will clearly need subventions next year. So those conversations will need to be had. Those cross subsidies will need to be identified. So that process is how we move away from only faculties that make money survive.
Hi there, my name is Mia Akbar and I work in the biology department. I have 4 questions, 2 of which have already been answered. But I also wanted to share that I am the treasurer for PSAC 901, and I share that because I understand that building a budget in part should reflect the will of your membership and the values of the institution. And I think that the folks in the room and all of the outrage that's been inspired means that the budget is not really reflecting the values of people in this room. There are a lot of questions that have been raised, and one of mine was about how we are planning on recruiting international students when a major talking point is that they bring in so much revenue for the university, but yet we're cutting all of the supports like the IQGIA, which supports those international students. And folks in the room are also curious about the pooled investment fund. That was one of my other questions about why it seems that we are underutilizing that. And it seems that people want that to be built into our budget. So I share that because I think that all of us should help decide building those budgets. And clearly this is our forum to be able to share that with you. And this is what matters to us. I wanted to ask a question about earlier. We talked about the DBRS Morningstar report was raised that position that declared that we were in like an excellent financial position to weather hard times and budgetary pressures in particular. And I'm wondering at what points over the last couple of years or last year the story started diverging from this, and what parts specifically make it so that we are now in this position despite DBRS Morningstar's report. And finally, this question came up while I was standing in line, is I understand how endowment funds work at colleges and universities, and that we aren't allowed to touch it. But if all of these measures result in the university being closed or going bankrupt, which I also think is an option, I think budgets that create this many cuts deter students from wanting to come here, deter international students. I'm a master's student right now deciding if I want to do my PhD here, and this is like not a welcoming environment for that. So if these measures scare students away and recruitment goes further down and the university goes bankrupt, what happens to the endowment fund then? So to reiterate, two questions, one about Morningstar report, one about what happens to the endowment fund at this university if it goes bankrupt. Thank you.
I actually don't know what happens to an endowment fund if the institution goes bankrupt. I can try and look into that, but that's not a future that any of us really want to contemplate, because we don't want the university to go bankrupt. So don't know the answer to that question. You talked about constructing the budget for your association and how that's done to reflect the members. Yes, I understand why you do that for an association. Doing it for an organization the size of university and allowing each individual person having input into the way the budget is constructed would be nearly impossible. The budget for an organization like this has to go through and approved by the board. That is the kind of statutory position of the university. So the board is what oversees the university's management in the interests of the kind of long-term future of the university. So the board is there to take this role. The board is internally constructed by taking faculty submissions, which were made, what was early December, late November. Barbara, because she made one. They're kind of come up through the faculty into my office, and then combined with the shared service budgets, which are made at the same time. And then we combine those. So the budget's not made by my office. It's kind of integrated by my office. So, we take up everything, and there'll be a back and forward between my office and different faculties. There was with this faculty. And as we kind of go through it and interrogate different parts of it and say, partly it's, is this what you meant? Did you, can we be clear about what this means here? And sometimes it'll be a pushback on, is this a good idea? In previous years, there's been a kind of collective kind of day of presentations where all the deans present the faculty budgets to one another and to me. We didn't feel that was a good idea this year because basically everyone is doing different versions of cutting. There's no kind of opportunity for proposing, we've got this fantastic new kind of development in so-and-so, and, if you could provide us with 10 million a year for the next 3 years, then we'd be able to do this really fascinating thing. That would be what we'd like to do. But this year that didn't seem to be any scope for that. So after talking to the deans, I decided to not have that event, and to allow the deans, that then allowed the deans a couple of weeks additional to plan the budgets. And then they've come into us centrally, where are we now? Around about 2 or 3 weeks ago. So that's how the budget is created within the university. You mentioned the investment fund. I said earlier how the decision to take 5.2 million a year out of the interest earned by the investment fund was a decision and could be changed. Yes, I acknowledge that, but I also do have to let you know that, as I said at the board meeting, it was announced that the investment fund this year is currently losing money. Well, the report on Saturday, like 2 days ago, said the investment fund is down, right? This year, in this academic year, the investment fund is down. That is the only information I have. It's information as of Saturday, right? So it's reasonably current. And if it stays down, then there won't be any money coming out of the investment fund because it comes out of the interest earned by the investment fund.
Actually wasn't, sorry. My question actually wasn't about the pooled investment fund because I recognize you addressed that earlier. It was about the Morningstar report and why, again, we're in, like, we find ourselves, yeah, what changed? Thank you.
So yes, that report exists. As I understand it, that's a report about our ability to sort of, it's like a kind of credit rating in a sense. And it's about saying, if we borrowed money, could we pay it back? That was their decision. Morningstar did that assessment and made that statement. I wasn't here when it happened. I don't know how they figure out these things. They're an external agency and they do this regularly. I do know that on after Laurentian, the Ontario government put in place a new fiscal framework for universities, and we're working our way through that, and that will interrogate the finances of all the universities in Ontario at quite a deep level, and take a decision to put some universities into kind of more kind of closer management, financial management from the province than currently exists. I also know that at a recent meeting of all the principals of Ontario universities, the discussion was that there are probably 6 universities in Ontario close to or close to bankruptcy.
With apologies to all of the individuals who asked individual questions, I'm going to try to summarize a whole bunch of staff questions, if that's okay. So essentially the focus of the questions around staffing are, will there be a decrease in the amount of management positions? There are empty positions right now, and you're talking about future cuts. How do you expect the university to run without staff? And what other efficiencies are we looking to find? So that was a really, really broad summary, but I tried to capture everything that was there.
So, of course, the way the question was posed there is, do we expect the university to run without staff? Obviously, the answer is no. Right. But we do expect anything that supports the academic function of the university to be done as efficiently as possible. That is likely, let's face it, likely to mean that it has fewer people employed in it. The solutions that have to be through standardization. This university is poor on standardization. You look at how overtime is paid in one faculty, it's different from how overtime is paid in another faculty. You look at the fact that we use PeopleSoft as our HR software, and we've basically broken it because we constantly have to write kind of bespoke little kind of additional loops in the program to accommodate particular bespoke ways of doing things in that faculty or the other faculty. And eventually PeopleSoft has simply stopped resembling the kind of off-the-shelf product that you actually bought in the first place. So we need to standardize a lot of these things, make our job easier, and we need to use technology more than we do. We talked about budgeting several times, obviously. We know the reason we only do budget forecasts every quarter, not every month or even in real time, which is what you can do in some places, is because we don't have the software to enable us to do that. We need to get it and make that work for us, but we can't do it at the moment because we can't get the data inputs that are necessary. Budgeting is all done on a series of Excel spreadsheets, which is not right. That's not the way it should work. So we need to make all of these things standard so that we can actually do these things in a more effective and efficient way. These have all got to be part of the solution.
Thanks. Samantha King, Director, School of Kinesiology and Health Studies. Actually, I just want to pick up on that last point you make. I was part of the SEAS working group, and I've actually forgotten what the acronym stands for, but it was a task group in arts and science that was working on questions of efficiency. And we did a lot of research over the last couple of years, and I don't think anyone would disagree that the processes in our university need a lot of work, especially frontline staff and staff on the ground. And one of the things that I think most of us on that working group agreed on was that it would be better to fix the processes before we started thinking about restructuring. I also have one follow-up question from something you said earlier before I get to my main question. You'd said that no one had lost their job so far, and I'm wondering if you're including non-renewals in that count.
Yeah, okay. But I'll just repeat what Barbara said. Barbara said that the faculty had a series of renewals which they weren't made, right?
There were positions, non-renewal, a number of them that we did not renew the contracts on in arts and science. I don't know the number off the top of my head. David, Cormac? So we will get back to you on that.
We'll get back to you on. So
thank you. So to my main question, there's a strong element in the academic literature on restructuring that suggests that it's actually very expensive. It often doesn't save dollars in the long term because it doesn't address questions of organizational efficiency and effectiveness, the kind of processes you were talking to, because it doesn't consult with people who are most affected on the ground, and who know the university better than any of us, and because people go elsewhere because of their workloads have become unmanageable. So, and of course it destroys morale. You've made clear that you're not really interested in pursuing alternatives to cutting. So I guess I have a very practical question, which is, does the university have the resources to facilitate restructuring, given how long we're currently waiting for staff I've forgotten what we call it now, but when we regrade staff, when we evaluate staff positions, there's a very long wait with HR because of, I think, understaffing over there. And then also, does the university have the money set aside for the severance packages that it's going to have to give out? Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Many questions in that statement. I would totally agree with you that the first issue that needs to be addressed are processes, right? Function, if you like, process has to dictate structure in my world anyway, and our processes are not efficient, and they are complex and sometimes loop backwards and forwards on each other in a very annoying way. So yes, so I agree with that, which was, I think you said relatively early on. We have to do this process, I think, in two stages. We simply are not going to be able to survive if we do not address the debt issue. Right? We simply don't have the money to continue operating in the way that we have operated for the last few years. If there's you know, a savior who's going to come, you know, galloping across the hills and, you know, dump wholesale loads of money into our operating budget. I'll be totally happy to see that savior, right? Absolutely. I did not sign up on any of this to be doing what has to happen now. So I would be very happy, I'm totally happy to see any proposal for increased revenue. You know, there are constraints. There are constraints around how many students we can take and all of that. You know, we all have to recognize, we all know those things exist, but, you know, sensible proposals, ways to increase revenue, of course, are welcome. But if you're going to talk about, you know, we also know how long it actually takes to launch a new program or, you know, launch a new anything, right? So I'm not sure those are going to solve the debt issue. In theory, you can solve the debt issue by growing, you know, by increasing revenue in some way. In theory, you can do that. In practice, it's more difficult. Do we have the money set aside for severances and for... No, frankly. We know it'll have to be found. It's one of the current risks on the budget. There are a set of substantial unknowns in the current budget. Severance costs are one of them. Beta College is another one. So yeah, that you know, I said budgets are forecast, right? Things happen during the year that make the forecast either more or less right. No one expected us to have a castle that started crumbling a couple of months ago. So no, we need to work through that. We can't really put sums for severance into budgets until we have some idea of what the scale of that actually is.
Hi, thanks. So I've been around Queens for about 20 years, mostly as an adjunct until not too long ago. But I guess in that time, and I would say maybe about the adjunct situation, that I see the move to teaching fellows being a step in the wrong direction there. But apart from that, you know, I guess I've been here long enough to feel this university go through other paroxysms of budget cutting. And it's so frustrating and soul-sucking and time-consuming and anxiety-provoking that I can't believe that the university allows it to happen again. The university has the means to control things so that things can run more smoothly. Things should run financially more smoothly here, and we shouldn't have to be forced periodically to go through these exercises of restraint. It's just silly. It's silly and backwards, and as it's already been said, there's going to have to be so much time and energy spent on all of this. It's just going to, you know, suck the time away from our students and other things that we could be doing more usefully. So I really feel this is unnecessary and should be avoided. Needs to be avoided by an institution like Queen's. Thank you.
The question, we have about 5 minutes left for your question online.
Perhaps my question would be for all of the questions that have been gathered online and any other questions that the group may have. We're collecting them. What can we answer in terms of will the individual questions be answered? Will there be more updates? I guess the question summarizing is what happens next with the discussions.
There will be continued communications about this. We'll just carry on. There's a whole plan of how the communications are going to be rolled out. So at that level, there'll be kind of communications that come out from my office about how this is going. I thought you were going to ask the question, are we going to collect these questions together and then provide answers to them later on? I mean, we can do that. we can do that.
I was trying to summarize that gently. Yes. So all these questions are being collected.
Yeah.
The question is what happens next.
Okay. So in other faculties, once they've been collected, they come into my office and we'll try and provide answers to them in the next few days. We'll send it through to the faculty and the faculty can do what it likes with them.
So I see there's two people here who already asked questions. Is there anyone else in this room who has not asked questions? We've got time for about one more question. Anyone online?
I think we might propose both our questions and try to be very brief. You have indicated that the question of leadership and values and what to cut should come down to the faculty. And I just want to acknowledge that the dean, the associate deans, department heads have been working really, really hard with a very daunting task and depressing task to try to come up with ways that are not us hurtful. And you asked, and I have my respect for that, and I want to acknowledge that work. You asked for us to respect the upper leadership, but I don't think today you have showed a lot of leadership because you have not actually given a vision of what the university would look like with a balanced budget. So accepting your numbers, accepting what we have to do in the next 2 days, 2 years, what is the vision? And the actual question that I have is 51% of the income goes to shared services. So this is a question about transparency, which has never been a strong suit at Queen's, and the transparency of budget at the upper administrative level of the university. You said the responsibility for cuts is pushed down to faculties. Has there been an internal audit of the increased number of upper administrative roles, including special advisors, associates and associate vice principals, directors, etc.? What is your office downsizing? And this is in the domain of your leadership, so I'll appreciate an answer.
Thank you. So I've been here for 35 years. In the second year that I was here, so I think it was 1991, I was the plenary speaker for the Canadian Association of Academic Accountants. And my plenary talk can be summarized as simply saying budgets are political. And I think it's the decisions accountants make on what to put on what side of the ledger. I was also an associate dean in the School of Graduate Studies at the time that Queen's moved to what was called the new budget model, which is also when we brought on the provost and replaced the VP academic and VP finance. And the idea in doing that, the hope in doing that was that by concentrating those two offices together, we would actually have a situation where there would be more care and less conflict. But what we're seeing is the conflict that I think, you say you care about Queens. I think everybody here and certainly the people in the hallway care about Queens. And why they care is because something terrible has happened in the budgeting process that's taken place at the university that has meant that a question could be asked that was asked by one of the staff people earlier. Which units, which faculties are considered to be productive or worthy financially an asset and which ones aren't? That's not the way we're supposed to be thinking about ourselves if we are going to think about Queens as a whole. So the piggyback question, to get really to the point, is it's not just a question of what alternative vision you have, or what alternative budgets could be presented, but could we think about a budget model that didn't pit units against each other and didn't pit faculty members against each other? And I do know, because I was head of department when the arts and science faculty did give money to other faculties in the university. I don't think we're seeing a realistic situation here. As a previous speaker said, on average, the budgets have been $44 million out. We're talking about a $48 million budget in a situation where 44 million of that might be out. I think what's really happening here is political, and I'll leave it at that.
No, I'm just trying to think because it's all very well to piggyback questions on each other if they're similar questions. Oh, well. Then we can't answer.
Town for participating in the town hall, and that we are doing a lot of work, and I've appreciated your insights, and I hope that you will see those reflected in the careful work that we have been trying to do to address the situation we're in right now. So thank you, Provost Steffen, for being here and having the town hall, and